So today I wanted to talk about something that's a glaring omission from Nintendo's library on the Nintendo Switch. Something that I think we all agree should be on this console at this point, and it's a little bit weird that it isn't. Is it because they're going to save it for the Switch 2? Is it because they don't want it to compete with other things? We'll talk about that today, but the games I'm talking about here are the Legend of Zelda games, specifically Twilight Princess and Wind Waker and their Wii U versions that came out some years ago. Why isn't there a transitional version that came out on the Nintendo Switch? Well, here's my thoughts on the whole subject. It's all speculative at this point. I don't think that there's any clear answers as to why we wouldn't have these games, but I think that the big reason is that Nintendo just sort of has just a list of games that they want to come out at certain times, and they just never fall into a period in which it makes sense to release them. So even with Skyward Sword HD, it was like we hadn't seen Skyward Sword since the Nintendo Wii, a whole console generation behind the Nintendo Wii U. And so in Nintendo's probably enlightened vision there, they thought to themselves, oh, we'll pull out Skyward Sword and put that out on Nintendo Switch because, hey, it's been a while and we don't have an updated version of this, and it would be nice to have an updated version of this. So it kind of took priority over Twilight Princess and the Wind Waker, and so we end up getting that game instead. There's also just the fact that there's other games in Nintendo's catalog like Metroid and Pikmin and stuff, even Mario games, and so those sometimes probably take priority over something that would be easy and not incredibly difficult to put out, like a Twilight Princess HD port or a Wind Waker port. And I think that's basically it. I know that, like, in an ideal world, we just would get a mountain of games, and, you know, game companies wouldn't care about whether or not it's competing or not. Like, it's just more options are better for the consumer. But in truth, when you're running a singular business where all the profit is siphoned to you with your franchises, you do want to make sure that you schedule these things out sparsely, so that way each game has a set amount of time to get its sales impact before you move on to the next thing. And I think that that's basically what has happened here, was that Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, they're surefire hits. They are going to do well, but it would be competing too much with other game releases during the Switch's lifespan. So that's my number one theory. I think, like, if we wanted to put on a tinfoil hat and humor a stupid theory, I don't personally believe this, but, like, there is maybe the slightest idea that this could happen. It maybe, you know, the Breath of the Wild and the Tears of the Kingdom style of 3D Zelda is something that Nintendo really wants to cement as this is the new Zelda and you love it and it is superior in every way to the older Zelda games. And when you only have old ports of Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time combined with Skyward Sword, which has historically been labeled as one of the worst 3D Zeldas that has ever come out, and I know that there's also a fan base for it, so I recognize you guys as well. Like, don't tell me that, you know, I'm wrong and that it's like the greatest game ever. I know that there's people that feel that way, but I also know that if you are a fan of Skyward Sword, you have definitely seen your fair share of detractors as well. It comes with the territory, so you at least know what I'm talking about. So, you know, like, if you put out Skyward Sword and face that against Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it's going to make those games look that much better, as opposed to something like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. Again, do I actually feel this way? No, because eventually those games will come out one way or another, whether it be Switch 2 or at the very, very end of the Switch's lifespan, which I hope it's Switch 2, where they can get even more quality of life improvements instead of, you know, the dead end of the Nintendo Switch, where it could even look slightly worse than the Wii U version. But we haven't seen that too much. It's funny because actually it's Wind Waker that kind of started this huge trend of using, like, realistic, you know, real life lighting on things, and I have seen that a time and time again on Nintendo Switch games, and I'm not the biggest fan, especially with the cartoony games like Mario or Pokemon. Like, I feel like that effect should not be used for those games, because yes, while it does give it a distinct style, it does take away from, like, the nice bold colors, the nice bold cartoony colors that you want to see in these cartoony styled games. But hey, that's just me. Basically, what I'm actually trying to get to here is that literally they call Link Toon Link in Super Smash Bros. When referring to the Wind Waker Link. And they call him Toon Link because they had toon shading on the original Wind Waker Link. So if they ever do release Wind Waker for the Nintendo Switch or the Switch 2, I really, really hope that you get an option between toon shading and the new, again, realistic lighting shade or effect. I'm not saying that, like, you can't have it. I'm just saying that, like, I would love to have an option for both, because that original toon shading holds up strikingly well. But the quality of life improvements of the Wii U version is vastly superior to what's available on the GameCube. So I really hope that we can get the quality of life improvements from the Wii U version with also the option of the original art style of the GameCube version. With Twilight Princess, there isn't much to be said there. It really did end up being like the best version of Twilight Princess outside of some incredibly nuanced nitpicking that I've seen on other YouTube videos. The good outweighs the bad vastly for the Wii U version, and all I really hope for in return is a way to play that game on the Nintendo Switch. The one thing that we will lose as a result is that gamepad functionality, which was fantastic, and maybe that's partly why we're not seeing these games on the Nintendo Switch, although we've seen plenty of Wii U ports come to the Nintendo Switch, so I don't like to immediately default to that as the logic behind why we haven't seen them. Again, my number one theory is that it just messes up with game scheduling, and that's truly like where I stand on the subject. Aren't we all just kind of tired of waiting, though? I feel like Nintendo, come on, man, put something aside for a little bit longer so we can get these games out, please, because Twilight Princess is amazing. All these kids that are coming in and like becoming new Zelda fans from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they need to have Twilight Princess and Wind Waker as options outside of Skyward Sword. Like, they need to see just how good the original formula can get. That's really like my big takeaway from getting these games out there, so that future generations don't just automatically assume that, oh no, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, it's just a natural evolution of Zelda. It's not. I mean, like, until we get a game where there's more elements from those older games baked into the open world exploration aspect of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, they are two separate entities that offer something unique and valuable on each side. I definitely talked about this in an earlier video, but, like, you know, again, to briefly touch upon it, there are definitely things that are just intrinsically better at the moment with something like Twilight Princess than Breath of the Wild. And so the argument of whether or not one is better than the other, I think is silly. I think that there is great value to both types of Zelda games. And we just need to wait and see if the Zelda formula will eventually adopt those elements, or if we need two separate types of Zelda, much like how at a certain point we had a top-down 2D Zelda to go with the 3D Zeldas. Regardless of whether or not they do one way or another, we do need more teams working on Zelda games. I think that having just one team that takes 6 to 7 years to put out a Zelda game is way too long of a wait in between Zelda titles, and I think we just need another talented studio that is dedicated to Zelda games so that we can get a new Zelda game every 2 to 3 years. I think that that's better. And before you say that that's impossible, you can't do that, just remember that Capcom had the wisdom to do this with Resident Evil. There may be 3 teams working on Resident Evil, and they're all super talented people, and so we get games in a more timely fashion, and they're all super high quality games. I don't know if you played any of the recent Resident Evil games, but they are top shelf, great quality games, and you don't see like the quality dip in between releases. So I just would love to see that for Zelda. I definitely have gone on a tangent here. Let me reroute back to the original topic. I think that it's maybe more likely now that we're going to see like Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD as like early year 1 titles for the Nintendo Switch 2, because that would be a great marketing aspect for that new console, and it would be very easy and cheap to get a team on there to essentially reformat it for this new console and what it offers. Time will tell on that one. These are just my speculations, my theories, and I'm just curious to see what all of you think. Do you think we're going to see it on the original Switch? I'd be interested to see what you think about that. I'm getting more and more skeptical about the idea of it coming out on the original Switch, but, you know, I will eat a piece of paper if I'm wrong about that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. And you know, early channel self-promoting. I don't usually do this, but if you can hit subscribe, it's gonna help out this you know, channel with like no subscribers at the moment. So you know, it would help me out a ton. If not, thanks for watching the video regardless. Take care.